Welcome back to Yoshi Entertainment, everybody. Just recently, there was a private investigator by the name of Steve Fisher who was allegedly hired by the owner of the home, or one of the homes, because allegedly David had multiple of those things, or at least apartments that he may have been renting, allegedly. A former owner of one of the places he was renting that hired this man to find out what happened to Celeste, because apparently the FBI is either too incompetent to do it, or they're complicit, or rather complicit at the worst, or just so careless that they won't do anything at best. Both are still awful. Y'all know I have to say allegedly, and this is my opinion and speculation, correct? Anyways, now recently there have been some speculations and people have been alleging that they don't know where the whole dismemberment thing came from, that allegedly that might not have actually been what happened to her body, that it was just so decomposed, etc., that it wasn't actually dismembered. We don't know for sure still. I feel like there's still a lot of details that are a bit shady here, still need some light shined on them, if you will, but that her body was in that trunk and it was in there for a while, allegedly. Now, this private investigator is alleging that, now I'm saying alleging, he said it, but I'm saying allegedly, he said that on July the 29th was when the car was moved to be parked, allegedly, where it was, which was the same day that David and his friends, his entourage, went on tour. I honestly believe that at least David knew that that body was in that car when it was parked there, and he went on tour knowing that girl's body was in that car. Like I said, that's my opinion, my speculation. We have to say allegedly. Now, that location where it was parked was on Bluebird Avenue, which was allegedly, according to this article and the private investigator, within walking distance of wherever he was staying at that time in the Hollywood Hills, and that it stayed there until early September, where it was impounded. Now, the only reason why that happened was because him having that car parked there violated a 72-hour parking ordinance in that area. This man, Steve Fisher, is alleging, well, I'm saying alleging, but he is saying that he knows who parked that car there, that somebody got in that car, they were caught on camera, that they were an identifiable person, and that he knows who it is. Now, a lot of people wanted him to spill the beans, and I honestly believe he wanted to say more than what he actually said on all these news media outlets, but he said he did not want to interfere with the investigation that the authorities are already doing, because, you know, people can get in trouble for stuff like that. And also, I believe that he could be in danger if he spills too much of the beans, so to speak. I don't blame him for putting all the information out there, because he could be putting a target on his back. And I get it that comes with the territory of being a private investigator. But at the same time, I wouldn't want him to risk his life and something happened to him because he released more information than what he really had to at the time. The people who are responsible for getting down to the bottom of this and holding who's accountable is the LAPD. Now, I mentioned the FBI earlier in the video, but the people really responsible for fumbling this situation really is the LAPD. But like I said, we could go around in circles about that over and over and over again. We all know how this kind of stuff works. We all know how our raggedy justice system, and I'm putting that word in air quotes, works. Now, this man also spoke about, because remember, they did, if I'm not mistaken, and if I remember correctly, investigate David's place where he was staying at to try and see if they could find any kind of bodily fluids, if you will, if they could find blood at the scene, to see if that home was the place where he or somebody may have hurt that girl, did something to her. They did not find anything. So whatever was done to her, if she was dismembered, like I said, I don't know if that detail is actually true or not anymore, because there's been a lot of questions raised around that. If anything was done to her whenever she was still alive, or even after her being deceased, it was not done at that particular residence, because they didn't find anything at that residence that would suggest that. So it must have been some other location where she was off, or whatever else happened to her. Now, he said whenever he did his investigation, some of the things that he found, he said, okay, listen, I'm not saying that it's illegal for people to own certain things. Although the fact that he had some of the things that he had in that place raises some questions. And he said, specifically, he used the word sadistic. And I quote, the investigator characterized the materials as going beyond typical tools, describing them as sadistic, end quote. Which doesn't surprise me when I've seen some of the music videos that he's put out, some of these song lyrics. He was very deeply into the occult, very heavy. Clearly, he is in the industry. He's clearly very infatuated with all things demonic, gore, deceasement. Now, here's another thing that messed me up about this situation, particularly this particular detail, and I quote, Fisher said these items have been photographed and delivered to authorities, though he noted the LAPD had not collected them during their September 18th search of the property, end quote. Are they serious? So you mean to tell me a private investigator who had nothing to do with the situation originally and was hired by somebody else had more of a mind to collect the materials that seemed, as he said, sadistic, that could have indicated something deeper, very disturbing was going on here, that could have indicated that there was this was pointing to some kind of evidence, if you will, and collected the tools and gave it to the people who were supposed to be doing that. And the people who were supposed to be doing that didn't do it, and he had to do it for them, essentially. And this is why people keep saying that the LAPD is a joke, that they don't expect much from those people when something goes wrong, which is sad because there are people falling by the wayside, kids going missing, things happening to people out here, and all they have to depend on is the LAPD not doing their jobs, allegedly, essentially. That poor girl never stood a chance between them and her family, the stuff that was going on, and these industry people. There were even other people who were shocked at how far he had gotten compared to what the LAPD was doing. And I quote, Lauren Collins, host of the Outlier podcast and pop crime TV reporter, expressed complete surprise at the lack of progress in the investigation during the court TV segment. Collins said if it weren't for Fisher's work, she would be even more concerned about the case's direction, end quote. Yeah, because it doesn't make sense when you really look at it. It doesn't make sense how these pieces are not falling together. Again, when a private investigator could do all this by himself, and I don't believe it took him very long, and the conclusions that he came to by himself compared to the actual authorities. Now, they're claiming and alleging that they still don't know what happened to Celeste. They still don't know the cause of deceasement, if you will. They're still allegedly waiting on a toxicology, if that's even still happening, even though there have been people that have been saying that it shouldn't have even took that long. It absolutely still disgusts me, and there are people still pointing this out, that young man has not said anything since all this has happened. He's remained very quiet. You haven't really seen him, to my knowledge, posting a whole lot of stuff on Instagram. I think he's been streaming, maybe. He's been playing video games, etc. Basically doing the same thing, like all hell isn't breaking loose, because a girl who he was seen with in multiple pictures was found unalived in his car for only God knows how long. And speaking of how long, pretty soon I would imagine we may have another timeline that tells us what actually happened, or at least the events leading up to her going missing, actually going missing for that final time, and when she was actually unalived. Now, this private investigator also said, y'all know I have to say allegedly, that he found a camera that was David's, allegedly, that had pictures of Celeste on it, and that there was one dated for January the 2nd of this year, and no more allegedly after that. So he believes that that January the 4th photograph of her on his camera was the last proof and indication of her being alive, which has led people to believe that she may have been unalived in January of this year. Now, some people are saying if she was unalived at that time, there's no possible way that people would not have known or smelled the stench from the deceased body just now. That would have happened months ago. So some people believe that she may have been put in storage, if you will, like in a freezer, and then taken out maybe a couple of months ago and put into that trunk. And then that's how people notice the smell, etc. But that basically she's probably been deceased for almost a year now, which is so sad and so disturbing. Now, this private investigator has a Twitter page, and he was explaining the process of when somebody goes missing, when a minor goes missing, the intricate details of how that's supposed to work, the authorities that are supposed to be approached, a process. There's always a process with this stuff. The reports that are supposed to be filed, how it's handled with an adult versus a minor. He specifically mentioned the details of that for California. He also then went on to explain that if that person's family, the missing person's family, finds them, they are supposed to contact the authorities to let the authorities know, oh, this person is no longer missing. We found them. They're supposed to talk to those authorities, verify that they are that missing person, explain what happened, what transpired, how they ended up missing, and the authorities are supposed to confirm that they are not a danger to themselves or other people. Now notice he mentioned all this, he explained all this, and he broke this down, and I believe he did it for a reason, because that is the exact opposite of what Celeste's family, her mother specifically, did concerning Celeste. He explained how she was reported missing on February the 14th, 2024. If I'm not mistaken, I spoke about that in a previous video, and I was breaking all this down the first time they were talking about she was missing. Those 3 original dates, I believe one was like in February, one was in March, then one was in April, like I said, if I remember correctly. He even pointed that out and said, oh, well, they said that last time she was missing was in early April, but then she was spotted in a picture with her cousin at her cousin's high school graduation in late May of that same year. And then in September of that same year was when she got into it with her neighbors. That video that we all saw that I made a video about before all of this. So she couldn't have possibly been missing, allegedly. And he even questioned, okay, was she really missing if we saw her on these multiple accounts? On top of that, he also questioned, okay, well, maybe her parents or her family refused to admit that she was not missing and they knew exactly where she was and to notify the authorities of this because they were afraid it would trigger a CPS investigation, which now makes me believe all of what I've been saying in all these videos even more, which is there was something going on in that home that should not have been, and they didn't want the authorities to find out about it. He even went on to talk about how he was notified by somebody close to this situation about some details, and I quote, from the start, someone close to the situation in Lake Elsinore told me that after the last report, certain family members instructed concerned neighbors not to search for Celeste because she was staying with a family member near Los Angeles. Is that why we haven't heard a word publicly from her family? End quote. Which is diabolical when you think about it. Your child is missing. You tell other people who are concerned, clearly more for your child than you are, not to look for them, not to approach you with information. Why? Is it because something's going on and you didn't want people to know? What is the real issue? That mother needs to be investigated. I don't care what anybody says. Her entire family needs to be investigated. This also validates what I talked about in one of my previous videos. The YouTuber by the name of Chronicle Speaks, whenever she did her own research and investigation, she went to who allegedly was Celeste's mother's Facebook page. Notice that this woman was posting all kind of stuff almost on the daily, none of which was concerning her alleged missing daughter. And then when somebody went to her page or tried to message her about, hey, I think that there's somebody that might be your daughter that looks like it's your daughter who may have gotten caught up into a situation that does not look good at all, you might want to contact me. Nothing ever became of that. Allegedly, she just brushed it off. Allegedly. So now it's starting to once again look real shady on the part of the mother. Once again, she needs to be investigated. I don't understand how people can fumble this badly. I don't understand how our mother is not a person of interest. Once again, why she has not thoroughly been investigated. And even in this article, it said, oh, well, she's having a bit of a language barrier because English is not her primary language. She speaks primarily Spanish. So we don't have translators all of a sudden. This particular part of the situation is giving that woman knows something and somebody's keeping it from coming out. Now here's a picture of her allegedly with the cousin at the graduation whenever she was alleged to have been missing at the time last year. There are people who have been doing some digging on the internet. Like I've said before, some of these people on the internet, they can do better research and investigations than the actual authorities, who are claiming and alleging that David may have been at that graduation as well, and that she may have been with him at that graduation. And if not allegedly at the graduation, that it was some other event that she was allegedly at with him that they may have known about because of the pictures that he took, and they were able to track down those locations based on what was in the background and the pictures that she took to know that they may have been there together at the same time during that time. I told y'all before, in like the first video, that this was a rabbit hole that just gets worse and worse and worse. He posted this on his Twitter, the private investigator. And I quote, Esmeralda, I have a question for you. Did you attend an event with David and Celeste on April the 21st, 2024? I'm also curious why Celeste was attending your graduation, yet was still considered a runaway and not enrolled in school as a school president. That's crazy. It seems you knew better than that. End quote. Hashtag Celeste Rivas. Hashtag Celeste Rivas Hernandez. This is why a lot of people, myself included, keep saying that we all believe that her family was complicit in what happened to her. That they knew that this grown behind individual had that child, had no business holding her, having her at whatever residence he had her at. Y'all know we have to say allegedly, doing God only knows what. Now, the next set of questions that I hope are answered very soon, that'll help us understand all of this, more pieces to the puzzle, if you will, is once again, what was going on at that home? Why did she keep running away? What were they doing? Because I believe something was going on that should not have been. So what was going on? And why in the world would they allow this to happen to their daughter? Why in the world would they not go get their daughter, take care of her, tell the authorities, oh, she's no longer missing? What was it that they were hiding that they did not want to have happen that would have been exposed if they would have went to the authorities and did the right thing? Now let's shift gears for a little bit and talk about this young man that was in multiple pictures with David. Now they call him Neo. I believe his handle on social media is Neo the Asian. And he allegedly was one of David's friends, one of these young people that was in the entourage, who also called himself an assistant to David, allegedly. Like I said, spotted in multiple photos with this young man. Take a notice of how he's doing the one-eye symbolism. If you understand, you understand. Once again, no surprise there to seeing some of these music videos and the kind of stuff that this creep likes to put out, has labeled music. Now, there's been some speculations by people on the internet that they think that there was some kind of love triangle going around. I'm not going to label it that because you cannot be in love with a child. If y'all understand what I'm trying to say, there's no romantic love that an adult has for a child. That's called PEDO, point blank, period. They're trying to label this as, or maybe they're thinking that he was doing something to Celeste, if you get my drift, and that this Neo character had some kind of feelings, maybe, allegedly, speculations, our opinion, for David. He left multiple messages, multiple comments, if you will, on his social media posts. There are pictures out there. I wasn't able to obtain them myself. But like I said, he would leave comments underneath David's posts like, you healed me, or healed, or something like that. He even said, oh, you're so beautiful, something to that nature. Some people might say, oh, well, why can't one guy think another guy is beautiful? Well, I never said that. I never tried to imply that, oh, well, if a guy thinks another guy is good looking, by default, he likes the guy or he has some kind of feelings for him. Like I said, I never said that. Although you're going to have a hard time defending that stance after seeing this photo right here. Once again, let me reiterate, one guy who is straight, who likes women, can say, oh, that guy is good looking. They don't have to have feelings between them. Another guy can compliment a guy on their looks. Although when I see a man wearing a shirt that says this, laid up with another man, I'm going to have questions. I'm going to assume that there are feelings involved in this situationship, friendship, whatever in the world they may have had going on. And I'm not going to lie, like some of these people, I'm starting to think that there may have been something going on between these two individuals. Now, the reason why I brought that up is because there are some people who think that Neo may have been the one who moved the car. The two of them were on tour together. He was on the tour bus. There is a photo of him and the other girl who was the alleged fake Celeste that was of the legal age that he was keeping around allegedly to throw everybody off and confuse people. Once again, like the creep that he is. All of them were on the tour bus together. Neo was in multiple photos with David, all up in his comment sections, leaving comments on his posts, boosting him up, if you will. And allegedly, after all this hit the fan and attention started to be drawn to Neo, he allegedly scrubbed all of his socials, or at least most of his socials. Now, as I said before, this is speculations, opinions, and allegations. Nobody knows for sure. Nobody should go over to his page and harass him or assume or accuse him of doing something that nobody has the materials or the tools to prove that he actually did. Once again, because this is all speculation. Although, and on the flip side, do I believe he needs to be investigated and questioned? Oh, absolutely, because of how close, allegedly, he was with David. This private investigator really opened up a can of worms in a good way, actually. He really has people thinking about details that nobody was actually thinking about, that people didn't even really realize. Him bringing the family members again into question, and all these other dates that they claim she was missing when she was with these other family members, taking pictures, going to graduations, going to family reunions, allegedly, fighting with the neighbors at her own house, allegedly. He really has drawn some serious attention to details that a lot of people were not thinking about. And now people are putting the pressure on where it needs to be applied to get these answers. And I hope that we get answers very soon so we know what happened to this girl and whoever did it is held accountable. But we know how this goes. We know about the justice system. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all of this and how y'all feel about it down in the comments below respectfully. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Y'all all have a very blessed, beautiful, and safe day.